So the saying goes, every comic has an ally who can throw them for a loop. That lady was Melissa Rauch. Sure, you might recognize her from The Big Bang Theory, and she was the queen of late-night improvisational music for Craig Ferguson. In one of his most captivating and spontaneous discussions, Craig made late-night TV watchers chuckle when he confessed something about Melissa. But what was it about her that set Craig's imagination ablaze, sparking the most intense feud in late-night comedy history? We shall determine. If you've ever tuned in to Craig's show, you know that the interviews are renowned to be quite relaxed and candid, and that they frequently veer off into surprisingly hilarious or bizarre territory. The ease with which Craig Ferguson's female guests interacted with him was the most intriguing aspect of his performance. They let their guard down and defied him with the kind of sassy, tongue-in-cheek banter that only the best hosts can do, putting his comedic chops to the test. However, a miraculous event occurred whenever a Rauch was present. The instant she took a seat, a link was immediately apparent. This laid the groundwork for the jaw-dropping comedy that had the audience in their seats. Craig Ferguson was taken aback by her abrupt remarks, and he remained silent, as though he was still attempting to make sense of their passionate encounter. He proceeded to joke about how she had ignited my mind. Craig Ferguson's expression practically glows. Please, after the intervention, incredulous, as it was in Belgium, in Austria, Champernere. Melissa wasn't even a visitor. She was only an accessory during one of Union's most iconic late-night moments. It wasn't an outlier because Craig often did this with his female guests. Compared to other platforms, many people found his show to be the most welcoming, humorous, and authentic. Who is he that women feel at ease in his presence? What is it about his entertaining approach that allows his guests to relax and delight in the unexpected? Melissa gave an electrifying performance that rendered Craig dumbfounded, and we will discuss all of that. For those who haven't been keeping up with Melissa Rauch's professional life, she's the author of the middle-grade novels Lusty Prayer and The Terror, and later married her beautiful writer and director Brian Kane. The way she appears on TV is drastically different from her work as a stand-up comedian and her breakthrough role on The Big Bang Theory. Craig has no idea that Melissa, in her actual life, is brilliant, humorous, and cunning. This is so different from her lovely and innocent TV demeanor. Craig, who has seen it all in late-night comedy and television, pops up every once in a while. Upon entering the stage, Melissa immediately emanated an aura of natural charisma. Her naivete and carefree spirit made her an easy target for Craig's infamously biting critique of the assessment's folly. You could say we're back to the beginning when Craig made an attempt to make light of this, I suppose. He drew Melissa closer and pleaded with her to be humorous in return. Melissa was ready to play a different part, and he had no idea. Melissa, acting as innocently as she could, shrieked, "Did you think I was blameless?" Hey, Craig, I'm from New Jersey. Growing up, there was no way I could pretend to be innocent as a late-night host who has interviewed hundreds or thousands of guests. Craig's face lit up with genuine amazement. In contrast, Melissa was the type of guest who could really bring out her comedic timing, unlike other guests like Craig. After then, it became into more of a wit war amongst the guests than an interview. Afterwards, Craig confessed that the competitor who was attempting to outthink him set my mind on fire. He appeared genuinely amazed by her capacity to compete with him, though he did acknowledge that she had to use some quick thinking. Uncharacteristically, she had thrown in a number of his wild energy teasers during the interview to avoid winning. However, the account of that one amazing occurrence is merely the beginning of the profound connections he forms with his guests, particularly the women. All ladies love Craig, and I don't mean in a superficial, smarmy way that late-night presenters are known for. Anyone who has watched even a couple of his interviews will tell you that. The ladies that grace his show they aren't merely guests, they're actively participating as equals and contributing to the conversation, and it's clear they know it. Consider Mila Kunis as an example. During her several late-night appearances on Craig's show, Mila, like many other Hollywood stars, has acted out scripted conversations and staged humor. But as soon as Mila took off her shoes, she flopped down on the couch like a house guest, and she and Craig began chatting like old friends reuniting over coffee. The room was filled with Mila's laughing. I don't know what else to do to make Mila's feelings of belonging a reality, particularly because Craig persisted. The key to Craig's success was his talent at making women feel comfortable enough to open up to him. Kristen Bell is our last speaker. Over the years, Kristen's appearances on the show have consistently been top-notch. Kristen kept her word and told Craig everything, which made their interactions unique. It wasn't just the humor, though. Faith was the key. Craig and she sparred like long-lost friends, sharing jokes, laughter, and deep personal topics that she had previously kept hidden. Believed being authentic on Craig's show would shield her from any judgment, as honesty is paramount in late-night interviews where stars frequently read promotional scripts. However, this is completely out of character for Craig, since the ladies, ranging from Kristen Bell to Mila Kunis, were simply enjoying wonderful, unconstrained conversations. What made Melissa's interview with Craig so intense was that she wasn't your average promotion visitor. She had the self-assurance to spar with Craig and leave an impression that went beyond his humorous timing, which added to the interview's intensity. In stark contrast to Craig's casual, on-the-spot banter on other shows, he treated them like royalty and made them feel at home. The banter was more than a means to an end. It was a masterful display of humor, irony, and sincere curiosity that he used to occupy himself between inquiries. Moreover, Craig possessed an extraordinary talent for wooing women. Melissa was an ideal ally for his verbal shenanigans. Right from the beginning of the conversation, he made it plain that he wasn't content to just promote an enterprise, offer some compliments, and then head home. This included his choice of late-night cuisine. He aimed to test Melissa's limits by inflicting the kind of menace that only Craig could muster. Known for his mischievous smile, Craig asked Melissa, "Do you ever worry that you're too funny for your own good?" Melissa appeared unfazed by the direct question, in contrast to the other guests who would have either laughed it off or rehearsed a canned response. Instead, she continued, "No, but I've been wondering if you are." As she completed the sentence, the entire audience burst out laughing, and Craig's face brightened with joy. The fact that Craig never sought to outdo the guest or build up the jokes was only one of many things that made his presentation stand out. Making sure everyone felt comfortable enough to just be themselves and let the conversation flow was the main objective. The comedic timing of many shows hinged on the rapport between the presenter and their guest. But think about this. This wasn't an isolated incident involving Melissa. It occurred repeatedly during Craig's conversations with females. Whether it was Kristen Bell making fun of Craig as if they were siblings, or Mariah Carey laughing so hard she almost couldn't speak, Craig bent the rules with his female guests. The banter was equally courteous and irreverent. The host's jokes tend to take center stage during late-night shows, often to the exclusion of any female guests. Without ever making a female guest feel inferior or patronized, he was equally adept at making sure all sexes had a wonderful time. Kristen Bell and her late-night bantering partner are the ideal couple. Kristen and Craig's irreverent sense of humor were a great match. not in a sexual sense, but as best friends who would constantly tease and poke fun at each other. You can tell it's all in good fun when characters are destined to annoy each other. Their on-screen chemistry was explosive. An advantage of having was the fact that their love blossomed over the course of multiple appearances. On Craig's show, Kristen was practically a constant, and she wasn't even alone. As soon as she took a seat, though, she broke protocol for a guest. Instead of laughing at Craig's jokes, she dutifully nodded in agreement. She was on par with her in terms of zeal, comedy, and sarcasm. One of their most memorable moments happened when Kristen brought an extra dose of ridiculousness to the discourse. She flirted with Craig, saying, "You know, Craig, I only come on this show because I know I can say whatever I want without getting in trouble." Her grin betrayed her mischievous desire to jest. Smart face, written by such a good writer as Craig Kelly, Ben. Craig leapt to his feet and said, "Yes, that's right." Kristen was completely comfortable being herself on Craig's show, tormenting and confronting him as she pleased. Kristen was not shy about injecting her conversations with Craig with humor and eccentricity, whether she was regaling him with tales of her life or gushing about her favorite sloths. I know, sloths are adorable. Even though Craig appeared skeptical, Kristen made the unforgettable decision to play a joke on him by making up this fantasy story of her best adventure. Even though he had heard everything, Craig continued to play along while listening intently. Unveiling Kristen ratcheted up the tension in the gathering. Everyone in the audience, including Craig, couldn't help but burst out laughing when she finally confessed it was all a fraud. Kristen Bell and Craig are among the most beloved late-night comedy teams because to moments like these, but the humor and laughter transcend far beyond that. What sets Kristen's appearances apart is the chemistry between her and Craig. Their trust in one another allows for an unusually candid discussion. Especially involving his female guests, Kristen Bell and Craig have collaborated on some of the most spontaneously hilarious late-night moments ever. Craig keeps up with the fact that celebrities are frequently instructed on the content and delivery of their remarks sets his show apart from other late-night programs. Craig's show was refreshingly different because it focused on the couch potato nuns rather than the Hollywood alter ego, so the well-prepared answers weren't the point. Among the many women that have graced his show are Kristen Bell and Melissa Rauch. Craig treated the ladies like real individuals, realizing that they were, and not simply another stop on the promotional circuit, so they could be authentic instead of putting on a show for the cameras. Finally, female regulations aside, I wanted to keep this real. Think about the times he spoke with Drew Barrymore. Even as a tiny girl, this girl has been making headlines and has made more appearances on late-night shows than the average person can count. However, her interview on Craig's show was unlike any other because she was simply herself. Enthusiastic, honest, and full of life. In the course of their discussion, Craig inquired, "You've been doing this for a long time. Do you ever feel like you're playing a role in real life?" Drew hesitated before responding, "Yes, and that is precisely why I love hosting events like these. I can be authentic here. I don't have to pretend." At its heart, what he created was a sanctuary where people could feel comfortable being themselves. Women didn't need to be impeccable or courteous. They also shouldn't be bashful about admitting when they were wrong or trying to hide behind well-reasoned solutions. They could be careless with Craig, making fun of him and joking about without worrying about him getting even. In a profession where women were continually and at times even more intently observed than males, this was of utmost importance. Prior to Craig's show, late-night television wasn't exactly a refuge for women. Rather than deciding to enter politics not only did Craig's Scottish wit and charisma set his late-night show apart from the competition, but so did his plan. He had no intention of making fun of his visitors or turning them into punchlines. He was not seeking for a viral sensation. Instead, he made it a point to address each subject independently. To a large extent, this is why the show's female cast felt at ease. Female actresses in particular are guilty of objectification on late-night television. They sell their newest projects, gush over their physical attractiveness, and occasionally chuckle at the host's jokes. With Craig as host and many storylines to literally die for, having the great Madeline Combs, famous actors and actresses weren't merely famous to Craig, they were fascinating human beings with interesting backstories, eccentricities, and idiosyncrasies that warranted investigation. If you're sick of the same old late-night interview fare, you might enjoy Craig's chat with Maggie Gyllenhaal. Craig and Maggie had an insightful discussion regarding parenthood and modern-day female navigating the entertainment industry. Subtly, Maggie said, "I don't think anyone has ever asked me something like that on a late-night show." Craig, ever the comedian, reacted with his signature wit, saying, "Either this, or I'll inquire as to your..." Maggie and the audience caught on to the joke, but Maggie couldn't help but laugh. Craig had a way of taking conversations off kilter without making them awkward or forced. Another attendee, Ava Mendez, would also find herself in the midst of such a conversation, which would ultimately take an unexpected turn. Craig seemed more interested in Ava's interests, home design, and current films than in asking her about her most recent film. As a joke, Craig asked Ava, "When you feel helpless, Ava, do you ever rearrange your room furniture?" Ava was taken aback and amazed. As soon as Craig announced his departure from The Late Show in December 2014, it was the end of an era for both the late-night TV audience and the intimate, real area he had created for his visitors. By the end of his time there, Craig had created a show that focused less on celebrity culture and more on real human connection. The interviews he had with the women across from him were the only times that connection felt so real. The show went from being about Hollywood glitz and glamour to being about reality, which was something that everyone could relate. His charismatic personality put guests at ease, encouraged them to speak freely, and let his show flow naturally. After watching the show, Drew Barrymore, Eva Mendes, and countless others felt a sense of authenticity that isn't often seen on late-night television. Craig had a talent for allowing his guests to let their guard down and be vulnerable, humorous, and honest. By treating his female guests with respect and avoiding the typical late-night script, he created an environment where they could be themselves without fear of judgment. Those memorable, spontaneous moments continue to this day, even though Craig is no longer part of the late-night scene.